and this is the shorthand version of it. So the first item was a series of 3 different types of business assistant grants. That would be about 216 million. The second was extending unemployment insurance benefits. This would be about 94 million. This is perhaps the most controversial. 3, the waiver of certain fees for the hospitality industry. It's about 800,000. 4, food relief grants. That's about 10 million. 5, extend COVID-19 Minnesota Fund. And this would be to help prevent the spread of COVID and to assist a variety of other entities. And again, if you want to go into detail on the House Ways and Means site, but that's about 200 million. There would be about 15.7 million for temporary assistance to needy families. And that would technically be a loan from a federal reserve. And then whether or not we'd pay it back is always problematic. There's a small item to extend a date on an LCCMR appropriation that deals with one county. That's just a correction. A salary increase for other members of law enforcement. We did this for the state patrol. This would be about 6 million over the course of 2 bienniums. Increased funding for childcare. That's about 53 million. Funding for childcare assistance. That's about 11.5. Emergency housing assistance. That's about 50 million. I want to emphasize that these are all House proposals. None of this has been agreed to, and it's Friday.
My apologies. I couldn't hear what you said.
Sorry about that. My phone now seems to want to talk to me. So all I can tell you is that these are all in discussion. The big item is the extending of the unemployment benefits, and I believe the item there is whether or not the Senate apparently wants to end it in March. We want to end the extension in May. So with that, I'm open to questions, or if Jeremy's here, he can proceed.
Yes, Jeremy is here, so we'll let Jeremy share. Jeremy, if you want to share kind of an update on what happened in 2020 from the Senate side, and then maybe some outlook into 2021.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I apologize that I'm late. I'm at work trying to balance getting everything started for the morning and being on the Zoom call. The small business owners on the call can relate, I'm sure, and the phone ringing in the background. My apologies for that as well. Trying to multitask here. So obviously 2020 has been dominated by COVID for all of us, whether that's in the public sector or especially those in the private sector. So looking forward, I'm certainly happy to answer questions about 2020, but looking forward, next week there will be a special session that Governor Walz has called. The Senate will very likely vote to once again remove his emergency powers. The idea behind that is not to limit the governor on what he can do, but to encourage the governor to work with the legislature. We've been under these emergency orders for, I think, 8 or 9 months now, maybe even going on 10 months. And my biggest frustration and the frustration that I'm hearing from many constituents is that the governor is making these decisions on his own and not engaging the legislature. And when I say legislature, I mean House and Senate, I mean Democrats and Republicans. We should be working together. The legislators, at least I can speak for myself, I hear from many constituents on a daily basis, concerns, ideas on what we could be doing. This is from small business owners. This is from folks in the schools, educators, parents, healthcare professionals. We're what I like to say, the boots on the ground. We hear from our constituents on a daily basis, and yet we have been limited on our ability to provide input to the governor and his administration. So again, not looking to take anything away from the governor, just encouraging the governor to work together with the legislature is what I'm hoping to accomplish. My understanding is we either have an agreement or we're very close to an agreement on a relief package for small businesses and health clubs, all the businesses that have been forced to close under the governor's latest executive order. The one issue that is hanging out there where there's still discussion ongoing is on the unemployment insurance payments. And I believe there's discussion about doing that separately from the overall relief package. At least that is what some of the members of the Senate are pushing for, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to hold up the relief package that there is agreement or very close to agreement on the small business aid, again, for those businesses that have been forced to close. My guess is we're going to be somewhere around the $220 million mark, not counting any UI insurance benefits. So just 220 million of relief. As I think I got on late again, my apologies, but I believe Representative Plowski sort of gave the budget overview. The November forecast was improved from the last update that we got, which I believe was maybe in May or June. I can't remember exactly when that was, but for the current biennium, we went from a pretty significant budget deficit to now a projected budget surplus, which is obviously good news. It's better to have a surplus than a deficit, and it allows us to do more with these small business grants. Additionally, the budget outlook for the next biennium improved. We're looking at, I believe, about a $1.5 billion projected budget deficit for the next biennium, but there are two important factors, actually three important factors. Number one, the governor's latest shutdown through his executive order through December 18th was included in that forecast. Anything beyond that, my understanding from the briefing from Minnesota Management and Budget, was not included in that forecast. So if he extends the shutdown, that could negatively impact the budget. Two other things, even more significant. Number one, a federal stimulus package was not included in the forecast. So if the federal government can get their stuff together and in the House and Senate and Republicans and Democrats and the president and or the president-elect, whenever the timing is on that, if they can come together and pass a package, a relief package at the federal level, in my opinion, that will significantly improve the budget outlook here in the state of Minnesota going forward. And then the other thing that the other item that was assumed in that budget forecast was a COVID vaccine would not be widely available until June or July of 2021, so mid 2021. If a vaccine is widely available before then, we could see improvement in that budget forecast. If for whatever reason it doesn't appear that this is going to happen, but if for whatever reason that vaccine is delayed past mid 2021, then we could see that budget forecast go in the other direction and get worse. So I'm actually somewhat optimistic that the budget forecast will improve in February. But again, there are a couple very important variables, and a lot depends on how, when and how people react to the COVID vaccine when that is released. And hopefully, again, the federal government will come together, put their differences aside, and pass a much needed federal stimulus package.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jean, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think we should just let them start asking questions.
Perfect. All right, guys. If you want to unmute yourself, if you have a question for Jean or Jeremy, you're welcome to do so. Go ahead, Scott.
So I've got a question for each. My question for Representative Plowski is, could you talk a little bit about your vision as chair for the Industrial Education Committee? Yeah. And my question for Senator Miller is, maybe this is a little too much inside baseball, but as much as I like David Tomassoni, I prefer Jeremy Miller as president of the Minnesota Senate. And I wonder if you have thoughts about when the dust settles in DC, whether we might see Senator Miller as the president of the Senate again. So a question for each of you.
All right, I guess I'll go first. This committee is sort of a rehash of the Greater Minnesota Committee, but it has a primary charge. And that primary charge is what we had discussed during the mini session of 2019 at the hearing at the Technical College, which of course Winona State also participated in. And in a one-sentence summary, every high school senior in Minnesota should have the option of graduating, not just with a traditional high school diploma, but also with an employable skill set. So the task of this committee, the primary task, is to work over the course of this legislative session to develop what it would take to do that, to make sure that we would have an option available to high school seniors across this state, that they would have an employable skill set. This would mean the relinking of the technical colleges and our K-12 systems. It would also mean that at Winona State, the proposal that was made during that mini session, that we would now have that as our primary first bill that we would consider in the committee. And this would reinvent licensure and certification for an industrial technical educator that could go back into our high schools. So Winona State, and I know President Olson, you're very familiar with this, would have 2 years of it, and that would be the teacher licensure part. The technical college would have the other 2 years, that would be the certification part. So as quickly as we could get that started, but that's just one link. This bill will be built over the course of a legislative session. This isn't throwing in 100 bills or 1,000 bills and trying to figure out which of these bills work. This is having a series of hearings with the goal to get to a piece of legislation that would begin the process of saying that a high school senior would have the option of graduating not just with a traditional diploma, but with an employable skill set. With that, this committee is also charged with the disaster contingency account, which is going to have to be replenished, and also with broadband. But our first charge is significant enough. I'm also again chairing the legislative reform subcommittee of rules. We'll be looking at the joint rules, which are now antiquated. The pandemic has not only changed our lives, but it's also changed how the legislature works. So we're going to have a new series of rules, joint rules, but we're also going to be looking at the House rules that now are going to have to be changed as a result of the pandemic.
As a technical college graduate, I'm very excited about Representative Plowski's vision and goals for that committee, and I think he's on the right track. So Representative Plowski, thank you for continuing those efforts. So Scott, to answer your question, yes, I'll be back as president of the Senate. What we're trying to do is just avoid any political games and unnecessary lawsuits. The president, well, as some may know, many probably don't know, the state constitution says that if there's a vacancy in the lieutenant governor's office, that the president, the last elected Senate president, automatically ascends to that position. It's happened a number of times in our state's history. And when it's happened, the person that has ascended has held their position both in the Senate and was temporary lieutenant governor. In 2017, I think it happened. At the time, it happened to be a 34-33, one-seat Republican majority. Al Franken resigns from the United States Senate. Mark Dayton appoints his lieutenant governor, Tina Smith, to the U.S. Senate. That creates a vacancy in the lieutenant governor's office. President of the Senate, Michelle Fischbach, automatically ascends to lieutenant governor. She was, just like had happened in the past, she was holding her position in the Senate and took on the role as lieutenant governor. There was a lawsuit filed because at the time Democrats wanted a special election in Fischbach's district to try to take majority of the Senate. So what we were trying to do it was basically avoid that. Since then, there have been 2 Democrats in the Senate who have are going to caucus independently, and they will be chairing committees in the Senate, and ultimately caucusing with the Republicans. So that changes the vote count, or the makeup of the Democrats, Republicans, and independents in the Senate. So Scott, yes, at some point, the plan is for me to take back the reins and continue my role as president of the Senate. And my primary focus is going to be, number one, to keep the train on the tracks, keep things rolling, and keep everything on time. But we're coming off a very divisive election that really tore at the fabric, I believe, of our country and our state. It was about as nasty as I've seen in a long time, even here locally. Some of the information that was even put out about me and others was either completely false or misleading, or I mean, some of the stuff was just absolutely made up. And it wasn't just in my race. It was across the state, across the country. And what I really want to focus on is bringing people back together. Let's focus on common goals. Let's focus on some priorities that are good for the people throughout the state of Minnesota. Representative Pawlowski is working on one of those. And I think that is something good that would benefit the people in the state of Minnesota. Obviously, the budget is going to be the top priority and the top focus of the legislative session. But within that budget are all these different priorities, and there are going to be a lot of similar ideas. There are going to be a lot of very different ideas. There are going to be some, like Representative Pawlowski and myself, we're going to be working together, trying to get good things done. There are going to be others, unfortunately, that are going to be, just trying to take things off road, get us off track, and maybe have a little bit more of a negative perspective on things. So what we want to try to do is stay focused on moving forward, working together, and really getting things done. And I think you'll see that from the majority of the people in both the House and the Senate. And ultimately, our goal at the end of the day is to get good things done for the people in the state of Minnesota. And the best way to do that is working together. Minnesota, I believe, is still the only split legislature in the country. So we have to work together to get these things done.
Thank you both. I do have a comment from Larry Lundblad as well, Jean, that he's very supportive of the teaching degree option and finding ways to prepare high school students for the workplace.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else have any questions? I have a question related to next week's special session to talk about some business related aid. I had a meeting last week with Commissioner Grove. There's about 7 of us chamber presidents that were able to share our insight and input with him. I know there's a couple opportunities for getting that relief out. One of them was to filter the money to the counties to disperse to individuals, and another was through the Department of Labor, or the Department of Revenue. And I'm kind of wondering what your thoughts are, what you're seeing and hearing. From my standpoint, definitely trying to filter it through the Department of Revenue would be a lot easier and quicker for businesses than to try and pass something down to the county, and then the county has to come up with a plan and facilitate that funding. So if you could share, each of you, what your opinions are, insights on that, that would be great.
All right, I'll start again. Yesterday in Ways and Means, this was discussed at some length. In fact, we had a 2-hour Ways and Means meeting, but about an hour of it was just on the business assistant grants. The thought was, and I'm not sure it was correct, was that having the county do this might actually speed the aid even quicker than the agencies. And if you're saying that may not be the way to do it, thank you for letting me know, because we have a caucus in about 3 hours and this is going to come up again. I will then raise the issue that what I'm getting from at least my local chamber is that the county may not be a good option. You would prefer the agencies to do it. So again, I saw this for the first time yesterday. I was briefed on it for the first time yesterday. This is one of the problems with the special session. We have almost no committees that are actually meeting. And the only public input we have are times like this. The caucuses are simply relaying interior negotiations that are with a handful of people. So I appreciate your input and I will relay the message.
My understanding is the Department of Revenue is pushing really hard to be the fiscal agent. And like Gene, I had heard that actually the preference was to have the counties do it. So this is different than what I've been hearing. So this is helpful because the Department of Revenue, what I heard said the payments could be delayed if they're charged with doing this.
Interesting. So from all of us chamber presidents that were with Commissioner Grove, every single one of us said to do it through the Department of Revenue or whatever would be the quickest way. As far as the counties, I know that Ken Fritz has already reached out to us as we facilitated the CARES grants for them, and we would be happy to facilitate this program going forward. We've got a good procedure in place and we could do it relatively quickly, but I do know across the state, as we watched the CARES grant facilitation, it was very different in every county. So that's my fear. And that was every other chamber president's fear that was in that meeting, was that everybody does everything so differently, and everybody's there was some they're still facilitating payments. They've processed them all and they still haven't gotten payments. And from our standpoint, we did payments from, I believe it was, we started in August and didn't finish until November. So that's still a good stretch of time that we were paying people, and we were pushing payments out every week here. So I guess, that was all of our concern, was that it's monotonous. Who's going to facilitate it? In almost every situation with the CARES grants, it wasn't the county facilitating it, was a different organization. So whether that was an EDA or whether it was SEMCRA type situation or Chamber of Commerce in some cases, somebody else is facilitating it. So I think just from guidance standpoint, if that is the road that they will take from a legislature perspective, the guidelines need to be very, very clear so that every county is doing everything identically the same, especially for businesses that have locations in multiple counties, so that things are fair and done cohesively.
And it might be a combination of both. There might be some businesses based on the number of employees that will get a direct payment from the Department of Revenue, and then the counties might get another lump sum, and then they can determine some of the criteria similar to what the chamber worked on with Winona County. So I believe part of that is in the proposal already. So it might be a combination of both. Gene, did you guys have that in the House proposal where the county?
Well, what we were briefed on was that there would be more flexibility with the county, and that the county would then be able to decide businesses that would be able to get the grant that the department probably would not decide to give a grant to. And again, the information that we're being given now would negate that. So the object was that the county would take a look business by business, and some businesses that perhaps wouldn't be under the umbrella would then be included, because the county would take a look at it and make a decision. But again, as you've already noted, we've got 87 counties. We have the potential to do this 87 different ways.
Right. That's my fear. And I will tell you, Winona County did this right. They did. When they facilitated those CARES grants, they let us help with the guidelines in such a way that the businesses that fell through the cracks that could qualify through the CARES grants did. There was that was a success. I will tell you, there were lots of counties that did not do it that way. So anywhere from nonprofits don't get qualified, which would eliminate the YMCA, who's shut down and suffering just like anyone else, to, you know, a business owner like, I'm going to use Jovi as an example, that doesn't have employees and is doing owner draws, didn't qualify for a lot of, didn't qualify for PPP, didn't qualify for some other things, but also wouldn't qualify in a CARES Act in other counties. So I think there's just got to be some cohesion in the language so that counties know how the guidance should play out and are doing it similarly across the state if the counties are facilitating. Again, I know here we've already been reached out to, so if that's the way that the ball rolls, the chamber will be facilitating those grants again for the county. But all right, any other questions?
This is Mayor Mark Peterson. I'd like to just jump in and say a huge thank you to Representative Pulowski and Senator Miller for their help with the Riverfront Trail grant money this year. The $2 million is going to do a lot of good work, and we sure appreciate their efforts.
You're welcome.
Mayor Peterson, a lot of that credit goes to Lucy at the city and Mike Chickanowski. They were both really good. And then the more technical questions, Chad Ubel was very helpful. So thank you to you and your team for getting us the information that we needed to get that done.
Well, thank you. It's a project that's been discussed for a very long time. It's going to be great to finally be able to do it.
And Emily Casey has a question as well.
Good morning. I work for Rethos, which is the organization that coordinates the Main Street program across Minnesota. And I can also share that some of our Main Street communities were lucky, like Winona, and were able to receive CARES funds in an appropriate way, and others are still struggling because their county did not dole them out correctly. So I can echo that sentiment. I actually just wanted to mention this morning, I know we have a million other things on our mind, but in June, the historic tax credit is due to sunset. That has been significant for smaller communities across the state in order to continue reinvestments in our downtowns. And if that sunsets in June, we will lose a major contributor to potential rebuilding, regrowth, renovation of these historic downtown buildings, and also put a halt on some of the job forces that are out there working in this historic arena as well. I know it seems hard to talk about something like a historic tax credit when we have so much else on the line, but the historic tax credit has led to such revitalization in so many communities, Winona included, that it's important to keep that on our brains. And June feels far right now, but we're really pushing to make sure that this stays up in people's minds as we continue into 2021.
Yes, that would be an item for the budget session, which starts in January of 2021. So that's more than likely going to happen again. And with a budget surplus, that again adds a lot of weight to continuing it.
Emily, if you or someone could send some information on that in January, once session starts, we don't have our committee assignments yet, but there's a pretty good chance I'll be on the tax committee. So I'd like to take a closer look at that. I know we talked about it last year as well, but please wait till January. Otherwise it'll get lost in the shuffle.
Absolutely.
Between now and then.
Any other questions?
This is Lucy McMartin. I work with the Port Authority and City of Winona. Again, I wanted to echo what Emily said in that's very important. The historic tax credits have really helped Winona with investment in our downtown. And then also the mayor, the Mississippi Riverfront Path, we're grateful for funding through the bonding bill. Also, all of the Minnesota ports have an association, and we work to secure money for our port authorities because there isn't a line item within MnDOT's budget. And just for example, in Winona, we ship between 1.5 and 2 million tons of commodities through the port each year, largely agricultural products. So the Minnesota Department of Transportation did receive funding for these ports, Duluth, St. Paul, Red Wing, Winona, and we are very grateful for that. We had our annual meeting yesterday, and we just want to thank Representative Pulowski and Senator Miller for remembering that the infrastructure in the ports is so important. It's a very economical and environmentally friendly way to ship products. It takes less trucks off our roads. And these projects require a lot of money within these ports. So thank you.
Yeah. Lucy, Kevin Wally has already contacted me about drafting the bill for 2021, so it's being drafted under my name.
Thank you.
Anything else? Wow, you guys are getting off pretty easy this morning. I feel like,
It's not that easy. There's another special session on Monday.
yeah.
Believe me.
Yes. You guys have done an amazing job for all of us. I really can't thank you enough for the hard work that you've done and the things that came out of 2020 despite the adversity. And Jean, I do remember in March having our last Eggs and Issues, which was State of the State with you guys, and you saying this will be your last in-person Eggs and Issues for a while, and you weren't wrong. So
Yeah.
here we are in December doing it virtually. But we appreciate all your leadership on our behalf.
No, well, thank you too.
Just like say, I think we're very fortunate to have our two representative senators working together here. I really thank you for your efforts and joint efforts. And regardless of all the bad things said about you guys during the pre-election events, I appreciate the job both of you are doing. Thank you again. Don Peterson here.
Thank you, Don.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it very much, and everybody have a happy holiday season.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care. Be safe.